slightly uncommon magazine, but it's still used in certain guns, notably the PSG-1, and this is mostly for the G3, and here's the G3 magazine. This one has this one has an irregularity as far as the similar takedown, because rather than the gut sliding out the top, it's going to slide out the bottom, and you only need to take out one screw to get the guts out. You need to slide off this base plate right here, which we'll show you in a moment. Notable features you may want to watch out for when disassembling it is this little plastic guide right here. You want to make sure that the base plate slides under it, which we'll show you in a moment. Okay, so this one has a Phillips head this time. So take the screw out, and you want to slide the base plate off. You can do this with your hand sometimes, and sometimes you may have to pry it. So brace the screwdriver against something on the inside here. You can usually find a surface and then just pry back on a little bit, and base plate should just slide off like that. Okay. Once you've got the base plate off, pull the guts out. This one has 6 screws, just like the M14 magazine. Tensioner weight's in the same place. Tensioner sprocket's still here. Feed sprocket's still here, etc., etc. Except for the notable feature that's different about this model is there's actually a feed stem. It's a circular feed stem this time. This is it's mostly different. It's the same method of dejamming as we said before. So yeah, okay. That's pretty much the anatomy of it. So put your magazine back together. Okay, as opposed to the other ones, the feeding hole right here, the feed well right here, that needs to go towards the rear of the magazine, as you can see right here. Watch, it goes right there. Okay, when sliding the base plate on, as I said before, make sure that it slides underneath this this little plastic guide right here, and also there's guides on the side of the magazine base right here. There's also, it'll match up with the base plate, so it should just slide over like that. Screw it down. Okay, put that aside. Here we have a common magazine, but substantially more complicated and larger. This is an AK Waffle Mag. Okay. This model is, this one doesn't really require anything to be unscrewed on the base plate, but it does require you to punch out a couple pins. There's 2 on the top right here. There's one right here, located near the locking lip right here. And there's one right here towards the front, where the front locking lip is. So what you want to do is take your punch, set them right there on top of the first one, punch it through. Okay. By now you should be able just to punch it through like so. These pins actually have knurling on them, so you might want to get a good idea of where the knurling is. Usually it's on the left side of the magazine. You can see there's the knurling right there. Let's get a zoom in. See it right there. That adds for grip, and again removes the opportunity for it to slip out during mechanical movement. So let's get a zoom in so you can see what I'm doing here. Right. The rear pin is located right here, so take your pin. Okay, should be able to push it through by hand now, so there you go. Slide the magazine guts out the top, so let's zoom out. There you go. Now, slide the magazine guts out the top. As you can see, the BB reservoir is significantly larger. These magazines hold 550, 500 rounds. Okay, let's zoom in here a little bit. And this model has 5 screws, as opposed to the other ones we mentioned, which have 6 a little bit before this. Same method for detensioning. The feed well is located towards the rear. It's all in this portion right here. Tensioner weight's right there. Feed sprockets are here, and all right here, all right here. You got the idea by now, so I won't bore you with my monotonous bullshit. So, if you notice, the pins are 2 different sizes. The shorter one goes towards the front of the magazine, where the lip slips on the side of it. Okay. So, stop talking because I'm slurring. Okay, so I'll just let you guys see. There you go. Magazine's back together. There you go. MP5 Magazine. This one doesn't have a screw on the base plate either. And this one only has one retaining pin on the top of it, which is located right there, as you can see. So take your punch. Left side of the magazine again. Knurling may be there. Okay. Conveniently, the groove in the table caught the pin, so showed that before. And once you have the pin out, slide it out. As you can see, this one doesn't have a back support like the other magazines you mentioned. This one has 4 screws this time. There's one here, 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 here. Oh, and here. Actually, that's 5. I didn't see this one right here. So, okay, so there's 5 screws retaining this one in place. There's the lock. There's a locking ring for the mainspring. This mainspring is significantly smaller than the other ones that we mentioned, because this is a much smaller magazine. This one only holds about 180, 200 rounds or so. So here's your gear cluster. There's your winding spring, or there's your winding cog. There's your the connecting cog that sits on the tensioner sprocket right here, and then here's your tensioner weight. And it's the basic anatomy of it, and hopefully you got it by now. Okay. So, same way, push the pin back in, everything kind of holds together. Now we're going to move on to more unconventional magazines. Here we have a P90 magazine. This is a Marui style P90 magazine. This one right here is actually a middle capacity magazine. Jamming with these is less frequent as opposed to high caps. So the only basic maintenance measure I can say is put a little bit of silicone oil in there, run some BBs through it, and hopefully it'll run through here, run through everything. There really is no effective way other than taking apart the magazine to get this apart, so we're not going to cover this one. We just want to show you what we're dealing with here. So put that aside. Okay. And here's the high capacity magazine for the P90. This is another magazine you can see the guts on. As you can see already, this one actually has a 4-gear cluster, and this one uses a little more complicated of a feeding mechanism. As you can see, there's a large mainspring inside of here. So let's get a zoom in. Hopefully you can see through it. See, there's a large mainspring right here. Okay, so the best way to unjam these. These are not very maintenance friendly. The only way you can take these things apart is to take off this whole top casing portion right here, and that's the best way you can get through it. And the first step to taking one of these apart is you want to take out the mainspring, and you can do this by pushing in on this small little button right here, pushing in on it, and sliding the. I guess this would be a base plate, but this actually sits towards the front of the gun, so. Okay. And there should be a set plate right here that holds the whole spring in place. The spring has very little tension. It's just enough to keep the BBs flowing, so. Okay. The follower inside of there should stay there pretty good. As I said before, these magazines are incredibly difficult to get apart. There's actually, this time, there's 6 screws holding this whole casing together. So, take these 6 screws off. There you go. These screws are incredibly tiny, as you can probably see from the camera. That, yeah, these can prove to be a nuisance if they get lost. So be careful. It's the only thing we can advise you is be careful. Okay. The follower is pretty stuck inside there, as I said before, so what you want to do is keep your finger on that, make sure it doesn't come out of place. Okay. Once you pull that off, there's actually 8 screws underneath here this time. There's 8 screws holding this whole follower assembly inside of here together. As said before, not a conventional magazine design, not an easy takedown. So, remove the 8 screws. This method should only be used as a way of removing an obstruction, because there isn't much as far as where there's actually isn't a feed well inside of this model, or rather feed shaft on this model. As you can see, it's the feeding portion starts right where the feeding junction or the feeding bend goes. So let's get a zoom in on this. See the feed hole right here. You can see the whole deal right here. So there's less of a probability that it's going to get stuck up inside here. Usually feed problems come from the mainspring not having enough tension. This could be remedied by possibly lubricating the spring in worst case scenario. So yeah. So there you go. Take care when taking this whole assembly off, because there's a lot of loose parts inside of here. This magazine is built for modularity, which is the whole idea with the P90. It was meant to be modular, it was meant to be easy to handle, and thus the magazine is such. These magazines hold around, I think, 600 rounds, if I remember right, 500 rounds, something on that measure, something on account. These magazines have a notoriety of having feed problems anyways, because of how they're designed. But it's a small price to pay. There's solutions around it though. There's the box magazine modification for P90s, if you're familiar with them. Which you can use M4 magazines for the P90, but if you like the conventional look, then you probably have one of these. Okay. Once you've removed all the screws, you take this whole sub casing off. Be careful not to lose the locking, the retaining nib right here. That could very easily get lost. You can see it's kind of spring loaded and it's kind of just like wanting to come out. Okay. And here you have the guts of everything. Take incredible care not to lose, or not to pull this out, because the mainspring, the clock spring, is inside of here. Let's get a zoom in on this. Yeah, be careful not to lose this portion. As you can see, this kind of just slides around everywhere here. So there's a lot more going on inside of here. And here's the tensioner weight. There's the tensioner sprocket. There's the feed sprocket, and here you have your winding wheel. So once you've done all that, reassemble your magazine. Put this subplate on. Put your screws back in. You're probably bored watching me put this together, so we'll skip ahead, and I'll be right back in a second.